going to get into some of the benefits of using our imagination because when we think about how, when we grew up, we talked about imagination through fantasies, mystical stories, bedtime stories, using our imaginations for Halloween or dressing up. When we think about our imagination as kids, those things happen so naturally. Our kids play, they create, they go into this fantasy world. But as we've gotten older, we're not encouraged to really do that as much. Daydreaming or using our imagination is not really something that's encouraged as we get older through adulthood. But it's one of the things that we should never stop doing. So I'm really excited to talk about this on the show today, in ways that we can really be able to use our imagination because it's one of the most important skills for planning, for creativity, for problem solving, critical thinking, building confidence, and boosting resilience. And this is a skill that we can strengthen and train. When I think about kids and their abilities to imagine and create, I think about my 8-year-old niece. Every time I'm going home, she always has a new game for us to play, characters for us to become. She's always creating ways just with her mind to put us in character, to put on a show. It's amazing. And so if you have kids around you or if you've ever watched children play, just pay attention to the games and the strategies that they come up with. And a lot of times, if they are in front of devices or screens very often, that could limit some of their creativity. So it's really important as you think about kids in developing brain, get them outside, get them away from some of the devices at times so that they can just use their brains to create. It's very, very powerful. And like I said, unfortunately, as we get older, we're told to just face reality, come back to reality and not really dream or daydream. But one of the things we're going to talk about today is how imagination is great for our brain and mental health. Studies are proving that imagination generates new synaptic growth, which improves the brain's neuroplasticity, which basically means that our brain has a better ability to grow, learn, and heal, which is huge. So think about that. If our brain can create new connections, that means our cognitive power, our cognitive functioning, the ability for us to recover after an injury or some type of traumatic event is alive and well today. We can train our brain. And so if you've heard this show before, you know I talk about this all the time, brain training and neuroplasticity. Our brain can learn and make new connections. And using your imagination is one of the ways that we can do that. So on today's show, I'm going to talk about some of the ways in which using our imagination benefits our brain and mental health, but also some things that you guys can do today to start increasing that skill, increasing that ability right at your own home. What is imagination? Let's go there. What is imagination? Imagination is the ability to mentally represent scenarios that are not physically present. Like the example that I just gave you guys this morning, imagining walking into your local coffee shop, smelling the coffee, tasting the coffee, imagining going for a drive down and up the mountains, seeing the trees, feeling the breeze, being able to really create a mental picture in your head as if you were really there. And the cool thing about this is that once you really get into a practice of imagining or visualization, the brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's fantasy. So not only can this tool help you with reducing stress and relieving trauma and traumatic brain injuries, this can help you with peak performance. So when we think about the brain's ability to create with our mind's eye, without being physically present, creating new neural pathways, we're able to tap into something that the brain just feels like it's real and it's natural. It's happening right now. It's already happened before. So this is a skill that you can train and develop, and I'm going to teach you how and teach you some ways that you can practice that so that you can use this to perform better, whether it's in school, whether it's professional work that you do in sports. You can use this anywhere. Healing from trauma, and we're going to talk about that as well. So one of the benefits of using our imagination is that according to a neurological study, being imaginative creates more neurons in your brain. And if you continue to exercise your imagination later in life, you can be up to 73% less likely to develop memory problems that lead to dementia. Just by using your imagination, 73% less likely to develop memory problems such as dementia later on in life. So being able to imagine and visualize, when we think about some of those benefits, it increases our ability to learning ability. So when we can visualize and imagine seeing what's going on and see that more clearly, it helps with that learning process. The more engaged our brain is, the more likely we're going to be able to retain the information. Think about yourself and the personal experiences for learning for you. When I think about how kids have to learn nowadays in school, my mind, it just really blows my mind, some of the concepts that they're having to learn. But think about for yourself, in which ways do you learn best? Me personally, I love to use, whether it's acronyms or I have to put pictures with different things that I'm seeing so that I can retain and recall that information. But when you think about what teachers or coaches or parents have to do to be creative in teaching their kids or teaching a community or coaching their players, you have to really think outside of the box. So being able to use your imagination helps with the learning ability, the learning process, helping us retain and keep information a lot better. It also helps with the brain's ability to recover quickly after a traumatic injury or trauma. Traumatic injuries or trauma. One of the ways using our imagination helps us is it helps to speed up the recovery process. Building an active imagination plays a key role in synaptic growth, which is really good for the brain's ability to connect and make new connections. And so if you ever have been through a traumatic experience, if you were to have imaging technology on your head, there are several areas of the brain that light up as if the trauma or the injury is happening again. So if you're imagining being in a situation, let's say, for example, you're afraid to fly or you're afraid of spiders. A lot of times just by imagining getting on that airplane or imagining spiders crawling on you will light up the same regions of the brain as if you were really experiencing that scenario. So being able to desensitize yourself, there are certain trainings and programs that you can go through that you can actually go into experiences and simulations where you act as though you are really there in real time. Allows your brain to get into this place through visualization, to see things happening around you, to connect with the sensation of those things happening around you, but allow you to be safe in your space, to be able to heal and allow the brain to heal from whatever those traumatic events or those traumatic experiences were. So using imagination for trauma recovery is big, especially when there's something that's happened that's allowed you or kind of disconnected you from certain things. Maybe you don't go on trips because you're afraid to fly. Maybe there's been a trauma or an event that's happened and you really haven't been able to get past through traditional types of therapies. There are therapeutic interventions which have been studied and researched that using visualization, using your imagination to walk yourself through these scenarios safely has really helped people create new neural pathways and improve their overall mental health and well-being. Another benefit of using our imagination, we think about it as being able to boost your resilience. This is huge. This is key in any area of our life, especially when we think about our youth and just things that people are going through on a daily basis. Using your imagination forces you to think outside of the box. It forces you to get creative. And if things don't go as planned, being able to come up with scenarios and strategies to get yourself through, right? A lot of times we might have things in our head the way things are going to go, but if it does not go as planned, and if we're not able to think outside of the box, this could cause us to feel stuck. This could give us problems handling and regulating our emotions. And this could keep us bound and stuck by those scenarios and situations. So being able to use your imagination allows you to think creatively. What's the next step that I could take if A doesn't happen? What do I do next? What's my plan B? And so when you think about our life, we're oftentimes living our lives on autopilot. And so if we're constantly living in a way of just expecting things to happen the way they normally do, when situations occur, if we are not mentally equipped, being able to be creative, being able to imagine what's next, this could help you make you feel stuck, create stress and anxiety, and also lead to things like depression. So we want to be able to use our imagination for the benefit of boosting our resilience. Another thing that it does, it fosters curiosity. Allowing your mind to wander, this is one of the most powerful ways to engage and light up your entire brain. So a lot of times people get a bad rap for daydreaming, right? for being distracted, daydreaming too long. But this is one of the ways that your brain really begins to kind of foster some of that curiosity. One of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein: the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. People who imagine and create, they change the world. And we all have the ability to do so. So if you can look beyond what you see and imagine something different, you are a part of changing the world. Everything that is was once a thought first. So think about that. Everything that we have, in this radio station, when this coffee cup, whatever it is, this was an idea or thought first. Somebody imagined that and created that. And so curiosity, being curious, being able to exercise the skill so you're not just looking at what you see and say, oh, that's all that is. This allows you to think a little further, be curious, creates more interaction with your brain functioning, which helps the brain grow and develop, creating those neural networks. So it fosters curiosity. Another benefit, it helps you develop higher levels of empathy. This is big, especially for our youth. So when we think about kids being able to play, being able to create, being able to imagine, this allows their brain to work better, but it also allows them to kind of take a look and step in somebody else's shoes. So when you're reading stories or when they're seeing characters on a screen or when they're interacting and playing with other peers, if they're able to really imagine trying to identify with that character or with that person or with that situation, this helps build empathy. And we need that, being able to see or to get an idea of what it feels like to be in somebody else's shoes. The last one, peak performance. Being able to use your imagination, being able to visualize your success, being able to visualize an outcome enhances your performance. So when we think about creativity and using our brain's energy, being able to see beyond what is allows us to perform at our peak. If you have to get up and do a speech, if you are an entrepreneur creating a business, if you are a student trying to take a test, you want to be able to imagine what it's like to be on that stage, to create that solution, to answer those questions. You want to be able to get there before you're actually there because, like I said, the brain doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. If you've already been there in your mind first, the repetition and the consistency of you being able to be successful in that outcome that you created in your brain is more likely to happen. So as adults, we do not practice this skill quite enough because we're so busy, right? So what I want to talk to you about now is just some things that you can do and ways that you can begin to create strategies for yourself and use your imagination to enhance your performance, to reduce your stress and anxiety, to help with your learning skills and abilities, and maybe to get through some of your traumas. So one of the things that I want to talk about now is some skill sets that you can begin to put in place today to start to enhance your creative and imaginative abilities. I'm going to use CTS is my acronym here, okay? CTS. The C is for creative imagination. The S is for strategic imagination. And the T is for telling stories, okay? We're going to start with the C. What to do to increase your imaginative abilities. C is create space to create. Create space to create. When you think about the world that we live in today, we do not give ourselves time to think. We're overscheduled. We're booked left to right. When we do have downtime, we're on social media. So something else is already hijacking our brain's energy. We don't have time built into our schedules unless you schedule it to create, to allow your mind to wander. So creative imagination, this allows you to create space to create, okay? We need space for this. And a lot of times we're not training people and our students, we're not training people at work to create, to daydream. We're all about productivity, right? It's about producing. You got numbers to hit, you got scores and deadlines to meet. So there's not much room for you to have that white noise and that space to just create. So the first one here for C is creative imagination. Create space to create. So I want you to just block off time, whether that's in the morning, whether that's midday, whether that's in the evening or right before bed. Give yourself time to just allow your mind to wander. Turn off the TV, turn off the radio. If you're driving in your car, just allow your thoughts to be present In the shower, use that as a time to really be creative. Allow your thoughts to wander and see where your brain goes. You'll be surprised that once you get some peace and quiet, if you're driving home from work, before you get out of your car and go into the house, just sit in your car for a few moments. Sit there. Silence. Allow and create space to create. This will be something over time that your brain learns how to do more naturally. It won't take as long for the ideas to pop up because it's going to get used to the repetition and consistency of you allowing some downtime and white noise to happen. So create space to create. Our S is strategic imagination. Strategic imagination. What this looks at is being able to create scenarios, strategies, or games with your family or your teams or your kids, because our brains, especially our youth, their brain is still developing. And so if we can help them create ways to problem solve, create ways to make decisions, helping them to slow down and think before they act. I want you to be able to do strategy here. Do a game of best case, worst case scenario. Okay, best case, worst case scenario. This allows you to put success and safety plans in place, which will help you show up to situations more confidently. And it's going to also help you respond to situations more calmly and rationally. So when we think about best case, worst case scenario, that's just exactly what it is. What's the best case scenario? What's the best outcome that can potentially happen here? What's the worst thing that can happen? And if we can go ahead and imagine in our mind now what's the best thing that can happen and worst thing that can happen, this is going to put you in a better position to handle things when they show up. You're not behind the 8 ball, but you're also in front of the curve because you're thinking about different ways strategically on how you can get ahead of situations, right? How we can get out ahead of it. And it's powerful because if we can walk through, like I said, that repetition and consistency, if we can walk it through in our mind first, confidence builds, resilience builds, and our ability to stay calm under pressure, perform at our peak. It happens more naturally because the brain has been there before. So your second one is going to be strategic imagination. Create some strategies and scenarios with your family, friends, and teams that allow you to kind of talk about best case, worst case scenario. Number 3, the T, tell stories. Tell stories with your family members, your friends, your teams. Really get in the habit of somebody leading off, for example, beginning, middle, and end. Just creating a story that you're going to make up, and then the next person has to take a part of that. So if somebody starts with that story, the next person join in and create the next piece of that story. Then the third person joins in and creates the next piece of that story until you have a story or some type of plan in place that everybody's had a part in. Get creative. Use your imagination. This allows each person to kind of step outside of that comfort zone and just to imagine, play. We got to get back to playing, especially as adults. We got to create space to do that. And we have to be able to get into our comfort zone of doing it more often, which is going to allow you to create new ideas, come up with solutions, solve problems easier. Okay. CST, create space, strategy, imagination, and tell stories. And what if you're somebody right now that says, you know what, Trace, that sounds awesome, but I really don't consider myself a creative person. I'm not someone who can think of ideas or strategies or come up with things easily. I'm not that creative. Well, I want to say to you that we are all creatives in our own way. A lot of times we think about and we reserve that space or that title for musicians, artists, designers, people in that space, but we are all creatives in our own way. Our artistry may just show up in different forms. Okay. So just know that about yourself. You can develop this skill. We can all tap into this skill. It's really about practicing that and giving yourself an opportunity to create in spaces that you feel most comfortable, but also that steps outside of your comfort zone. Okay. Entrepreneurs are creatives, right? They're building, they're creating, they're thinking next steps ahead. So we all have this ability in us. But if you're someone who finds it hard, even when I just said, think about walking into a coffee shop, think about driving up the mountain. If you had a hard time seeing that, feeling that, and connecting with that, no worries. You can practice making this skill better. So what I would recommend that you do for people that don't feel as quite as creative, get inspired. Get inspired. So one of the ways that you can increase this inspiration and really start your creative juices flowing is to take out a magazine. Literally take out a magazine or get online and use a digital magazine. Flip through the pictures. Create some type of visionary board that allows you to look at pictures and see something that you might not have thought of. Trying different foods is another way to inspire that creative spark in you. One of my favorite things, and my sister and I, one of the favorite things that we do together, we go to open houses. Go into open houses so you can get ideas for design, for colors, for themes, just to see the artistry that's displayed in people's homes. Being able to step outside of your comfort zone, going outside of your community, taking a drive or walk in nature. These are all things that you can begin to do right now to help spark some of your creative energy and juices, okay? I would also recommend getting a notebook or a sketch pad, especially if it doesn't come naturally or easy to you. Just get out a sketch pad and start to doodle a little bit. Just start drawing. You don't have to have something that you're drawing specifically. Just doodle. Just allow your hand to flow across the page. You'll be amazed at what that connection does to your brain and what that sparks from there, okay? So start to draw. And if you're somebody who's consistent in everything that they do, meaning the same way to work, the same food choices, switch it up. The biggest thing you can do for your brain is give it variety. The more you're using left-right brain connection, the more you're tapping into the usage of your whole brain, okay? So don't be afraid to switch up your route when you're going to work. Don't be afraid to switch up your routine if you're having different foods or out to lunch. Do something different. Challenge your brain in a new way. This is going to help spark that creativity, get you inspired, and allow your imagination to run. The last one is turning off that music and radio. I talked about that as well. Turning off the radio, turning off the music, allowing your brain to just flow with its natural thoughts, nothing external, all internal. You're going to hear how creative that you really are. Is it somebody else's thought or is it your own? The more we can get quiet, the more you're going to hear from yourself, which is going to allow you to use your imagination a lot better, okay? So I want my community now, for you guys, I want you to go off and just imagine having the most amazing day. All right. Imagine right now that you're going to be walking into the most amazing day. Imagine having a day that everything falls into place. Your timing is perfect. You're going to connect and align with the most amazing and kind human beings on the planet. You're going to get a phone call. You're going to hear a news report. You're going to get something that you've been waiting on. Imagine what that feels like. Imagine potential setbacks happening, but you blow and roll through them as if nothing happened. Everything works out for you. Everything falls into place. Right place, right time, divine connections. Now connect to the energy and the feeling of that. Keep your mind focused on the opportunities that are in front of you. Imagine being able to walk up to somebody, smile, and just change the outcome of their day. Okay, so I want my community to go off and do that, be a part of the solution. I want us to continue to use our imagination and our creators for great. I can't wait to see you guys next week. I want you guys to go off and shine bright like the stars that we are, and I will see you guys next week. Have fun with this.